step into the realm of daring ideas and transformative dialogues. This is Voices from the Edge, the podcast that pushes boundaries and ventures beyond the ordinary. Here, we confront the crucial issues that shape our world today. From the heartbeat of community challenges to the untold chronicles of leadership. From the relentless pursuit of social justice to the essential lessons in safety and lifelong learning. Voices from the Edge takes you to the crossroads of change. Because the edge is not just a boundary, it's where growth happens. It's where the real conversations begin. So lean in, be inspired, and let's explore what lies beyond the edge.
And joining us today on the Edge is the marvelous Jasper Hartmann.
Jasper is an internationally recognized and highly sought-after instructor and keynote speaker in human intelligence and human-centric counterintelligence. His expertise lies in interpersonal intelligence skills, including elicitation, counter-elicitation, strategic questioning techniques, and tactical behavioral analysis. He trains businesses and government institutions in countering threats such as industrial espionage, insider risks, and hybrid warfare, sabotage. Jasper has been trained by both current and former leading military and intelligence professionals in the United States. He provides global training in human-centric counterintelligence for companies seeking to strengthen their resilience and robustness against critical incidents, including industrial espionage, hybrid warfare, and other risk-based challenges posed by foreign state and non-state actors.
Jasper, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing very well. And where are you joining us from today?
Well, I'm from joining you guys from Denmark.
First guest from Denmark. Have you always been living in Denmark?
Yes, I've been living in Denmark my entire life. I was adopted from Korea, so I've raised here but not born.
Oh, excellent. All right, so Jess, you are an expert in intelligence, counterintelligence, helping people prevent industrial espionage. First of all, how big an issue is this? How big a business is it, or threat to business? We have industrial espionage at the moment.
I would say it's much bigger than most people anticipate. Most businesses focusing on cybersecurity, cyber incident, but what they fail to recognize is that most incidents, even cyber, is based on human manipulation. And most people, because they are securing their IT, they lack awareness about physical security. I'm not talking about fencing or surveillance. It's more about how they secure their employees are not being manipulated or trying to be exposed to espionage. So while the cybersecurity part is safeguarding the data they have on servers and inside the corporation, then counterintelligence-wise, from our point of view, they don't secure their personnel. They don't train them in how to be aware or work against attempts on manipulation, social engineering, or espionage, information gathering. And that's a big issue, because why should I try to hack into a corporation if I can just walk in to get information, or I can get it from an employee on a business trip? And that bigger risk than most people are aware of.
Yes, from my perspective, makes someone vulnerable for that sort of manipulation where they want to gather information for another party.
I mean, how difficult it is, or how easy it is?
What's some of the characteristics that makes people vulnerable to actually being either a recruiter, blackmail, to get information for someone else?
Well, the big problem here, Tom, is that we are human beings, and despite being intelligent people, we are still humans. So our brain work in the same way and can be manipulated. So a great example of this is I can try to bribe let's say you have a locked door, and I can try to bribe a locked door and it doesn't react. I can try to flirt with it, talk nicely to it, but it won't open. However, if it's a human being and I give compliments, or I make them feel good, or they feel they owe me a favor, or maybe they have economical issues, that's a vulnerability that I can take advantage on. So everyone can be manipulated, can be a victim of espionage. The thing is about how to become more aware of the signs of someone is trying to manipulate you. And most people don't see it in the first instance. Maybe it takes one or two things before they realize maybe there's something going on here that I need to be aware of.
Is it too late at that stage? Has the person already got, or the agency or the third party already literally got their hooks in and have something now to leverage?
No, because most people, if we talked about, there could be government, state actor, or it could be a private actor, that they need a certain amount of information. So they may need only like 10% pieces of the information, and they still need to dig around to get that information. So they have to make different attempts. You can be lucky when you use elicitation to get the information faster, but that's a technique they use to get the information, but they still need to create this chemistry, build up a relationship with you, and that takes time. Even on a short basis, they need to create trust with you, and that can give you an idea of something going on. And they might try to give you compliments or create similarities between you, and especially known from the Chinese intelligence services as well, and other services that they try to create commonalities with you. Oh, you have a brother in the army. Oh, I got a brother in the army. And then kind of that. But then we start to have that awareness of why suddenly do we have things in common. And that could give you an indicator. Maybe not the first time you'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I got a brother in the army as well. But then when they work later on, you can start getting that awareness about it. Maybe we have too many things in common. Why is that person interested in what I work with? We don't know each other, and start getting that awareness, and then we can slowly move away from the conversation.
Are we able to train people to be aware of those sort of?
Yes, definitely we can. I mean, there was a research study back, I think it was in '96, that kind of showed the general awareness that people who hasn't been trained in awareness, they have an average awareness performance around 54%. So it's equal to flipping a coin. And when we talk about deception detection, it was down to, I think, about 48 or 47%. So, but if you train this, science shows that you can get up to a 90% awareness score to increase your awareness on these matters, and you just become aware of something going on and then move away from it. So you can train it, but it will take time, and that's what we need to invest in as well. Like we invest in cybersecurity, we need to invest in people and the skills and tradecraft to counter these situations.
Yeah. Something that's always piqued my mind is to do with government employees being subject to bribes and etc. In terms of public service, there's not many countries I've seen around the world that pay their public servants who may have sensitive or important data extraordinary salaries, that they are always vulnerable to being bribed.
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, most intelligence services or government employees, civil servants, they do this kind of work because they have some form of calling. They want to protect their country. So it's not about the salary, it's more about the work, doing that for the country. Where we see an insider threat is most often because there's been a change in their private life. There's been a change. That could be a messy divorce. It could be someone have created some kind of gambling debt and need more money. Of course, that could be influenced as well, and they could be changed by ideology. But it can also be changed that you don't feel your work is appreciated, or you have a boss who is not nice to you, and that's why you feel that you do a lot of things, good things, but you don't get the reward for it. So but it has to be some kind of change in that person's um, external stages. That there's something going on that makes that change. You don't wake up one morning. I mean, very few people wake up one morning and say, "I want to be an enemy of my own state or work against my own country." But so that there is often we see there's kind of change, an external change that create this need for more money or need to do something.
Intelligence community, counterintelligence community. It's an interesting field to get into. What's the initial spark that led you down that path?
Well, for me, it was more about being curious on people. Why do people do what they do? And then why do people think the way they think? And how can I assess that to see their true intent? So my career began on that curiosity. And my parents were also politicians, so that might have been a bit pushing me away towards it, become more curious on society. But basically, it was more about the understanding of people. Why do people do what they do? And how can we assess people's behavior and their intentions? And how can we be proactive? So instead of being reactive, how can we be more proactive and become aware of that? And that really what brought me here.
Right. Industrial espionage. Has it become a bit more sophisticated in the last decade or so?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, in Denmark, we are known for development of green energy and also innovation and technology. So talking from our perspective is that because we are very good at nanotechnology, for example, so our universities are very popular for, let's say, Chinese and Russian institutions to get that information to bring back. So we see a lot of doing industrial espionage, but not a lot of people talk about industrial espionage because it's not a good commercial for advertisement for a company saying, "Hey, we've been exposed to espionage." But definitely with what we see now, and especially what we see with what's going on in the United States as well, that there's a more need for information. There's more need for development, and everyone wants to be ahead of their competitors, and that's why definitely we see more industrial espionage. We also need to look at it in a point of view saying that there's much more money in industrial espionage, and we see that more that they invest that to get information.
What steps can organizations take if they suspect industrial espionage may be occurring in their organization?
Well, I believe we have to start backwards. So instead of saying, what can we do, well, we figure out, because often when you find out something going on inside your organization, it has been going on for 6 months or more. I would say the opposite is that we need to train our employees to not to be afraid of reporting incidents, reporting different kind of change of behavior from coworkers, and not be afraid of that. So we have that no judgment policy, no blame policy, but it's been misunderstood, not blame policy, that if you make a mistake, you're not getting blamed, or we don't point fingers at you. But it should be more about that better to say something, and it's okay we say something, even though it might not be right, that we still report it. And I think that's the biggest thing when we talk about espionage, either industrial or state actors or insider risk. It's that we, from the start with the onboarding, you put the whole beginning of that we have the security infrastructure. We create that from the inside. Today it's from outside and in, but put it more from inside the organization when they begin to learn how does this work? How do you report? What should you be aware of? And then have that be able to more reporting incidents, because the more they'd be better to help. There's something going on. Why is this person staying for long for work? Or when I was at this conference, there were some people trying to have a conversation with me. They invited me for dinner, or different things that when they report it, they will become much easier to see, oh, well, you have this incident here, and we have another one had the same experience. Then there might be something going on that we need to be aware of. What was it they talked about? When did they meet you? And we can start reporting that. And I think that's a much better place to start to do that, because it can be difficult to spot it when it's going on. So mostly people, depending on the time they have, will try to gather information over time. China is especially known for taking their time. So they plan many years ahead. And that can be difficult to see. So you might meet the same employee from a certain company at two, 3 or 4 events. And every time they build up a little bit more of the relation. So, you also this event. Oh, let's go out for dinner. Or how is your children? And then start building up that relationship. And suddenly they start to ask you for small favors, or they share information with you, and you feel obligated to give some information back. Or you might say, oh, shouldn't say this, but we're friends, so I can share this with you. And that's how it begins, with those small things, those small influential things and elements they place. So it's not like you wake up one day and see, oh, we have a doctoration on us. It's the small things in a row that create the big goal.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier social engineering, and I'm going along the lines that's what we're talking about with the human factor in industrial espionage. What sort of training as a business should I actually give my staff in order to improve their chances of resilience against this sort of method of attack?
Well, we have created something called human resilience. So where we focus on the human element in social interactions. And when we look at that part is that you have built up a robustness and resilience to be aware of how does espionage work? What methods do they use, and what do you need to be aware of? How does it feel? And that's why what we do is that we teach tradecrafts. So it's not an advice, so you should be aware of this or this, but we teach how something feels, and we do exercises to feel, how does this feel on your own body? We teach you the skills and how you can do different elements of, for example, social engineering. So when you know how it works, I mean, I can talk about how to drive a car, but for you to really know how to react by driving, you need to sit in the front seat of a car and have the steering wheel. And that's why what we do is more focused on, you need to create that resilience. You need to work with the elements to understand them, to learn them. And that's what you should teach. You should teach the understanding, not just the idea, the theory about what espionage is. You need to train them in the same tradecrafts so they know how to counter it. Same with elicitation. You cannot do counter-elicitation without knowing elicitation.
Yeah. In your experience, role does senior leadership play in fostering security awareness information within an organization?
I like your question, Tom. What I would say is that most leaders, and I hope not to step on too many toes by saying this, but most leaders in big organizations are focused on the turnover and the general management of the organization. So they will have senior leaders who is focusing on cybersecurity or security awareness. So they might not focus on it because they don't see it or don't feel it. So it might gonna be down prioritized. Cybersecurity is per 9 out of, there was a report from 2023 where it says that still 9 out of 10 CEOs think that the risk is solely on cyber. And then I think that's very important today as well, that they think, okay, this is a threat we can see and feel if something goes wrong. But it's invisible to see physical espionage or physical manipulation, that they think that because people are people, that they have their conscious mind, and that's why they can say, well, they know what to do. But they don't know what to do because they get manipulated and influenced in a certain manner, so they don't realize it. So that's the basics of influence, that we are more vulnerable. And I don't think the CEOs look at that risk in the same way, because it's not something you can see or feel in the same way. You cannot measure that. I mean, you can, with cybersecurity, you can measure, say, okay, we had 1,000 hacking attempts, and we have done this, so we can see here is the value. But if you get training for your employees in human resilience and counterintelligence, you don't really see the effect. You can do some pen testing to see the awareness, but you don't see the everyday effect. As well as most people think that espionage stops when they go off duty. So like, I clock out from work, no more influence. And that's not how it works. So there's a little bit, you can't measure it in the same way. And I think that's why it's a little more fluffy to feel on. And then that's why CEOs don't feel it. But I guarantee you, if something big happening, a big attempt happening, or espionage happened, and it has big influence on the company, on the turnover, they will invest immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you manage the need for organizations, or the desire for organizations to be collaborative and be open and transparent with the needs of data security and privacy?
I mean, in the EU, we have NATO, and they have made these directives for the companies that demands them to have a certain kind of, a certain kind of security. So they created two directives, one called CER, for critical entities resilience. That's a EU directive, focusing more on physical security as well, and resistance within critical infrastructure, both physical and hybrid threats. And then we have something called NIS2, that is for Network and Information Security Directive 2, and that's focusing on cybersecurity, but also a little bit about the physical security regarding cyber incidents, for, again, critical infrastructure. And of course, if you're not a critical infrastructure company, you're not under the same rules. But we see more and more, especially what's going on, what we have in Ukraine going on, and everything geopolitics. We see more and more that there's things happening. We see hybrid wars going on. We see countries such as China wanting more information, becoming the leading power of technology and knowledge. So we simply see this increase of incidents going on, and that is helping companies be more aware of. They need to do something about it. They need to invest in the human resilience as well, not just the cybersecurity part.
Intelligence gathering, counterintelligence, some of the oldest trades known to man, I'd suggest. However, artificial intelligence and other lovely technological advances in the last few years, how do you see counterintelligence evolving in the next decade or so to counter any of these methods of gathering information?
Definitely, we already see a increase in the use of OSINT, open source intelligence, that the more private companies open up and provide these open source intelligence report. That could be for deeper background checks or such. And with the AI, I think we can become more better in analyzing maybe trustworthiness over the phone, or we can see more if there's a credibility, if someone calling, analyzing that systems already, companies already provide the services of voice analysis, where AI helps to analyze the risk in the voice. So I can see that become a more implemented part of the company. So when someone called reception, they might you can see directly, okay, there might be risk involved in this conversation. But still, when we talk about AI and human intelligence, we will still see, I mean, we see this already today, that intelligence services and state actors has increased, Chinese and Russian especially, has increased their human capacities. So they're increasing on more human sources conducting physical espionage. Because again, you see this in the hybrid war, we see this, and you must know this as well, Tom, that to conduct something, either it's hybrid war, cyber, espionage, you still need to collect information. And the people who has the information, is real people. And most important information, you can't get that from a server. People know what's going on. People know what is planned, meetings. So we need people to gather that information. So it's interesting to see that there's a tendency that back in during the Cold War, that was kind of I mean, what we call it here is the war of spies. There was something that was spying everywhere. And we see now the increase going back to the Cold War, suddenly increasing the human capacities in human intelligence gathering. And that's really interesting to see that suddenly, because everyone is focusing on cyber protection, there is a need now to gather information from human sources. And I think we're going to see more of that, especially what's going on with the United States, where Trump has shut down for information sharing on technology with China. And so we see more and more people need information. We see the UAE wants to be a competitor to the Western market on technology and innovation. So they also need information. And we see some countries who is sanctioned to information. They also suddenly need that information to either enhance their military capacities or their civil infrastructure. So we see more and more of that they need information. So I think AI has its positives about that, how to analyze risk maybe in interaction when we're talking and we can record, but it still cannot analyze accurately behavior, because it's still us giving the AI or the technology the information to look for.
All right. Organizations looking to strengthen their security and putting in countermeasures, what would be your advice? It is to start like you have, start with the onboarding, make sure that the security idea and the security awareness, situation awareness is coming from the inside of the organization and is implemented from the inside and out. And that means that when we get a new employee, we start there, that we give them the information and we start the infrastructure from the inside, already from the onboarding. So we have that. If you go to the States or the UK, you see that people are trained in awareness in the bigger corporation and security corporation. They are trained from the inside, and you can see how security works. They are not afraid if someone walking around without their ID card saying, "Hey, who are you and why don't you wear your ID card?" In Denmark, if someone saw me running around without an ID card, they wouldn't say anything. They will just look at me as, I haven't seen him before, but he has 6,000 people working here, so it doesn't matter. And so we need to incorporate that as part of our identity, the corporate identity, that we care about this. And it's important for the company, and it's important for your work and for the survival of the company. And that's the way we should start it, and have training so the employees understand the knowledge that they have and what they can use them for.
very few people think about it. It's the information I have here. If I gave this to my worst enemy, what could they use this information for? Instead they would think, why would they use it? And why would I give it? So they don't have that idea of what information security really is about. And then I think that is the way to start, because yes, we can come and train people in awareness and information security, but if they don't see the necessity to protect something and why it's important to protect information, why it's important not to share information with your coworker when you're eating lunch in the canteen, if they don't understand that, then you will not fix it just by having an awareness course.
There's a bit of a saying here in Australia that you only need 3 things to get into most organisations in Australia: a fluoro vest, a step ladder, and a good story. Questions just to finish. First of all, what's your assessment of the current security environment that we're facing globally? Is it volatile? Is it stabilizing and becoming a bit more rigid? Or what do you think we're looking forward to in terms of a security environment?
Well, if we look across history, we see everything comes and goes in waves, and following the industrial developments. And we also see positioning on different, what we call it, so that people have their own agendas. So every country has their own agenda, and I see that the market follows. So every time there's a change, either in geopolitics, or in mass movements, or in technology innovation, we see a change. So I think that in what's going on, I mean, we are in the last 20 years, we've seen massive development in technology. I mean, we have iPhones who have more technology than the first space shuttle to land on the moon. So the technological development has gone so fast. So I think we'll see more competition to get more information, more about people who want to be the first mover, market position. So I think we'll just see more and more of those security environments enhancing in the future.
Last question before we have to call it time, Jasper. And I really enjoyed this conversation because it's something that actually genuinely interests me and has for years. But the last one is a bit of a contemporary one. This week in particular, well, the last 10 days, let's be honest, the good old Chinese app DeepSeek, or Chinese program DeepSeek, has been all through the news. And we've helped governments in the Western world literally ban it from all government employees and their computers. Is it a justified thing, or is it just China has this policy that all technology companies that gather must hand it over, at least in theory, to their government?
Are you talking about the directive from 2017?
We've got the same thing. We had the same little issue there at one stage there with TikTok. But DeepSeek itself now, I was surprised how quickly we've had governments move on it.
Yeah. I believe it goes back as well with the directive from 2017, where it was stated from the Chinese Republic, the Republic of China, sorry, that every Chinese and company has to give information to the Chinese state if needed. How to answer this question? And so what I see is that with the DeepSeek, well, it is a great AI tool, and if you work with it on a because it does work offline, but we don't know when it's online what the information is shared with the Chinese. And what we need to be aware of is it's not you and I that is the problem. It's the mass data of what's going on that they can use for their benefit. And we see also government employees are not allowed to have Chinese apps sometimes. So we shouldn't be, we should be cautious about what we share. We should start having more thought about what information we give away. And that's a new way of thinking, because we as individuals don't see, well, if this app tracks that I have a cup of coffee or I talk on my cell phone a certain amount of time, that doesn't important. But we lack to see the span of the mass data that could give us information. And then we know that intelligence services has found in Chinese cars, part manufacturers creating this LiDAR scanning tool that instead of erasing it, they will send it back to China instead. So why is that important? I mean, most people say, well, they can see where I drive, but again, they can scan areas, scan people to see that and that mass data, and that's what we should be aware of. And I think that's the problem, is that we don't know yet in what extent that this mass data can be used for. And we know that China wants to make the Westerns dependent on Chinese goods, and people, individual people, they often see, well, if I buy something from a Chinese shop, which is way cheaper than anything else, then they can have my data. So I believe that we haven't seen the scale of what this data can be used for yet. And I think that's going to be one of the next thing, how people or how countries, companies take advantage of mass data. We see it already with Facebook. Well, we haven't seen it in at least not publicly, how countries can use mass data to influence politics, to influence that. So we can only see the small, maybe the top of the iceberg. But I think, and I believe that they are growing on something bigger with all this mass data. And then that can have huge influence on us. So if they figure out what our needs is, what our what we do, when we do it, and all of that, and they can shut down all production from Europe, for example, because they know they just do it cheaper and faster. So they can shut down a whole society's ecosystem on these elements. And I think that's something we need to look at. And we need to see a change of behavior, at least from our point of view in Europe, that businesses in Europe needs to be focusing more maybe on lowering their prices and then be more competitive on the production, because this is something, if we not start looking at it now, that will take over this mass data.
Yeah. Okay, so and you can even see, if we shut down large sectors of any economy, the destabilizing effects it can have on governments, on mass. We'll appreciate it. All right, Jasper Hartmann, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I'm hoping sometime in the future you may consider coming back and talking to us again, because
Definitely.
what of that is actually really fascinating. But for now, thanks for coming along, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Tom. I would love to come back, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to Voices from the Edge. If you like what we are doing, like the episode and the podcast, subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes, and leave a positive review.